All right, let's say this. Let's say I invite you over for dinner to my house and I make you this wonderful soup and you taste it and you just immediately start to retch. Like, oh my gosh, this soup is so salty. Why is it so salty? And when you ask why it's so salty, what you're asking is, what is the salty making feature of the soup? What is it about the soup that makes it so salty? And of course, what you're really asking is, what are the ingredients of this soup? And so I tell you, it's water, it's carrots, it's cornstarch, pepper, garlic, soy sauce, onion, paprika, and cumin. And you say, oh, it's the soy sauce. That's the salty making feature of the soup. The reason I'm judging this soup salty is because it has this excessive amount of soy sauce in it. Similarly, if I said, well, here, wash down that salty soup with this beer, and you taste the beer and you're like, this beer is so bitter. Why is the beer so bitter? What's the bitter making feature of the beer? And again, we go back to the ingredients in the beer. It's water, it's grain, it's hops, it's yeast. And because you're a beer aficionado, you say, oh, it's the hops. That's what makes this beer taste so bitter, because hops are what add bitterness to beer. Now, why am I asking you these questions? It's because we have to think of actions in a similar way when we're judging them. Okay, so just like when we judge the soup as salty or as the beer and the beer as bitter, we're going to be judging actions as either moral or immoral. And what we're really doing when we do this is we're saying, well, what's the wrong-making feature of this action? What is it about this action that makes it an immoral action? Or what's the right-making feature of this action? What is it about this action? What is the feature of this action that makes me judge it a moral one? So when we look at moral claims like this one, you should save a drowning child, somebody's saying there's a right action to do here. Save that drowning child. Well, what is it about saving a drowning child that makes it a right action or a moral action? Needlessly harming an animal is immoral. Well, what exactly is the wrong-making feature of needlessly harming an animal? What is it about that action that causes us to describe it as an immoral one? Punching someone in the face because you disagree with them is immoral. Why? What's the wrong-making feature of that? A good person always tells the truth. Well, what is the right-making feature about truth-telling? Why is truth-telling something that makes an action good? Okay, so why do you have to be able to locate the right-making and the wrong-making action features of actions? Well, sort of related to the second question on your thought primer. Should people always try to do the moral action and avoid the immoral action? Now, this is kind of a trick question, because the answer has to be yes. Because the moral action, by definition, is the action that we believe should be done. Okay? And if it's the action that should be done, we're inherently saying, I should be doing this action. It's the moral one. It's the one that should be done. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, or maybe you wrote in your thought primer, well, no, sometimes you have to deliberately do the wrong thing. Sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where somebody is attacking you with a knife in a parking lot, and you have to defend yourself by using deadly force, potentially, on this other person. Now, what you did may be tragic for this person's family, particularly, if you've killed them or something, but we'd probably say, like, well, no, you actually did the right thing. You're morally obligated to protect your own life. You're morally obligated to engage in self-defense. I was watching this documentary the other day about 9/11, the day that the Twin Towers in New York City were attacked with airplanes, and they were describing how the U.S. government had deployed some fighter jets because there were still some airplanes out in the air, and they knew that the moral action to take would be, tragically, to shoot down one of those flying planes if it looked like it was headed toward a big population center. Okay, so it's a tragedy. It's a thing we don't ever want to have to do, but we would probably, in that case, say, well, yeah, as awful as this was, you shot down this plane, is actually the right thing to do. So don't beat yourself up about it, okay? So as we're working through these different scenarios that we're going to be exploring in upcoming lectures, be thinking very carefully to yourself, when you judge an action as the one that is the morally obligatory thing to do, or the thing that's morally prohibited, see if you can identify what exactly it is about that action that causes you to judge it as moral or immoral. What's the right-making feature of the action, or what's the wrong-making feature of the action?